Thank you to our media partners who continue helping us share important information with Calgarians. Today, you will hear from City of Calgary Mayor Jody Gondek, Calgary Emergency Management Agency Chief Susan Henry, City of Calgary General Manager of Infrastructure Services Michael Thompson, City of Calgary Priorities and Infrastructure Director Francois Bouchart, Alberta Health Services Medical Officer of Health Dr. Franco Rizzuti. Our speakers will provide statements, and following all speakers, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. We ask that you limit yourself to one question and one follow-up. With that, I will turn things over to the Mayor.
Thanks, Chris. Oki, Dadanistata, Umbawastich, Tanse, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to share two important pieces of information as we kick off this afternoon's update. The first is that Alberta Health Services has completed a thorough examination of our water quality and has given us the go-ahead to proceed to the next step of restoring our water system and having it back up and running at regular capacity. Dr. Franco Rizzuti from AHS will share more about water testing with you shortly. The next great news is that we saved even more water yesterday, marking our best day of water conservation since the 18th of June by using only 447 million liters. Thank you for stepping up and taking quick action on water reduction methods. I appreciate you. The green light on water quality from AHS means that our water standard or our water quality has met their rigorous standards, and we can keep moving forward into the next stage, which is to stabilize the system. As you know, after the repairs, we had 4 more steps that we needed to get through to restore water service from the Bears Paw feeder main. We had to fill the pipe, then we had to flush it, and then we had to test the water. And now we are going into the final step of stabilization of the system. And I must stress again that this step is the one that involves the greatest amount of risk. We are going slowly and cautiously to ensure that turning valves and pumps back on does not create strain on the system. Right now, preparations are underway at Shaganappi Pump Station, where we are opening valves to connect the feeder main into the system. This will take some time because opening a single valve can take up to 90 minutes. I have to be very clear. The stage we are in right now does not mean that water is flowing through the Bears Paw feeder main. This does not mean that water is immediately going to surge through that 2-meter pipe. To safely stabilize the water system, we must have a gentle and cautious approach as valves are being reopened, and we are being watchful as we are doing this work. In the meantime, please keep up your water conservation efforts and consider this tip from Julia in Brentwood. She is a proud laundry tourist, taking her laundry with her when she went to visit relatives in Black Diamond. On top of that, she's also gotten into the habit of wearing an apron during meals so she has less clothes that risk getting dirty. And like Julia, any of the actions that we can take to save water can greatly impact emergency situations. And there was one in the early hours of this morning. There was a fire at Old Beautiful Brewery. I happened to be close by and took some time to visit the site. I spoke with members of Calgary Fire Department as well as employees from Old Beautiful, and everyone was devastated. The building could not be saved. However, everyone is incredibly thankful that no one was injured in this. We have had a number of fires that have impacted many Calgarians in their homes and their businesses this past month, while we have also faced a water emergency. My heart is with all the families and the individuals who have been impacted by these fires, and I'm also grateful to the Calgary Fire Department for their life-saving efforts every time. And I am grateful to the good people of this city and this region for understanding why saving water is so critical at this point in time. I'll now turn things over to Calgary Emergency Management Agency Chief Sue Henry.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Today is a big day. The pipe has been filled, flushed, and now tested, and we can confirm we have passed and exceeded all water testing requirements. We are now formally moving to the next step, which is stabilizing the water system. This green light to stabilize the pipe gets us much closer to restoring Calgary's water supply, but most importantly, we have to be cautious. During the stabilization step, which is now underway and will be so for the next week, the water utility is at its most vulnerable. Calgary is at the biggest risk of another water main break or major disruption of service since June 5th, when this all began. If we go too fast, we could overstress the system and be in a worse situation than when we started. We have to remember that we're not just stabilizing the 6 areas that were under repair. We are stabilizing Calgary's entire 5,000-kilometer network of pipe and the system that supports it. Outdoor water restrictions continue to remain in place, and we need you to continue to reduce water consumption indoors as you have been doing. A big reason that we've been able to continually progress is because of the work of Calgarians and the work that you've put into conserving water. Thank you again, and please keep it up. Continue to make every drop count. It is a summer-long weekend, and I hope many of you have had the opportunity to take in some relaxation and some Canada Day celebrations. Some of you may be coming back from a long weekend away and have a carload of dirty laundry. Please consider spreading it out over the week, washing full loads only. We're also very much aware this coming week is the first week of summer break, which means summer camps, summer holidays, some of which are staycations here in Alberta. The good news is that during this stabilization work, we will be assessing when we can lift indoor water conservation efforts, and we expect more about that timing to come in the coming days. Until then, please continue your water conservation ways, and Calgarians are doing excellent reducing your water use. Keep skipping or shortening your shower, washing only those full loads of laundries and dishes, and collecting rainwater and grey water for watering gardens and for filling your toilet tanks. The previously closed and detoured sections of the Bow River Pathway and parking lot at Point McKay Park, north of Edworthy Park, have fully reopened. And you will start to see city crews and contractors demobilize as the visible portion of the construction repair phase winds down. Finally, our City of Calgary agencies continue to work here at the Emergency Operations Centre to make sure our city services can come back online as quickly as possible. I will now pass it over to General Manager Michael Thompson.
Thank you, Chief, and good afternoon. As you've heard, we've made more good news to share today about our progress. We have now completed testing, and it has shown the water in the feeder main is clean and safe. This has allowed us to move to the very delicate step of stabilizing our system, including opening valves that connect the feeder main to the rest of our network and slowly starting to increase the flow of water and the pressure from the Bears Paw water treatment plant. This is encouraging, but I want to stress that we still have a lot of careful, high-risk work ahead of us. The pressure changes created as we bring the pipe back into service could cause some issues to the pipe and throughout our network, as you heard from the Chief. We're proceeding with caution, carefully monitoring, and we're prepared to respond if required. For now, please continue your great work to save water. It remains very important to us. And thanks for continuing to make every drop count. I'll now pass it over to Director Francois Bouchart to run over some details of the next steps.
Thank you, GM Thompson, and good afternoon, everyone. As we shared yesterday, we sent water samples to the lab during and after our flushing process was completed yesterday. The results, confirmed by Alberta Health Services and Environment and Protected Areas, show that we have exceeded health guidelines and the water is clean and safe. Dr. Rizzuti from Alberta Health Services will share more of this shortly. This is excellent news and has allowed us to move into the critical stage of stabilizing our system. This is the most involved step as we carefully restore water back into the system. It's also the stage with the greatest risk. During this stage, we will open valves that connect the feeder main to the rest of the water distribution system. We will slowly turn on pumps at the Bears Paw water treatment plant to increase water flow and pressure to the feeder main. We will also begin making adjustments to the rest of our water network that were made to keep water flowing over the past few weeks while we were relying mostly on the Glenmore water treatment plant for our supply. These actions all introduce pressure changes, both to the feeder main and other parts of our network. When you change pressure in pipes, it creates stress, which can cause leaks and breaks. We need to take a gradual, conservative approach to monitoring and stabilizing the system. This means increasing the pressure, then waiting for the system to stabilize, then increasing the pressure some more. Throughout the process, we'll be monitoring for pressure spikes and breaks throughout our water distribution system. We are prepared to address any emerging issues and make adjustments as we go. Now, I know you're all anxious to hear exactly when some of our water restrictions will be eased. And right now, it's still too soon to say. A lot will depend on how things go over this next period. What I can say is that when we do ease restrictions, we won't do it all at once. Our priority will be easing indoor water conservation efforts first. Tomorrow, we'll have a status update for you, more details on stabilization, and more on how decisions to ease restrictions will be made. For now, we remain in a critical period, and I need to ask you again to continue to conserve water. We really appreciate the work you all did yesterday to bring usage down. Please keep it up. Your work to reduce water lets us focus on our work. At this point, I'll hand it over to Dr. Rizzuti, Medical Officer of Health with Alberta Health Services, to talk more about our water quality testing.
Thank you, Director Bouchart. As I've shared before, water testing is a critical component of any water system and all water main repairs. And this main feeder pipe repair is no different. Safe water testing was a collaborative effort between Alberta Health Services, Environment and Protected Agency areas, and the City of Calgary, both the Emergency Management Agency, city leadership, and the water team. I want to stress that we had regular meetings and discussions where we were able to collaborate, work through scenarios, answer all questions that arose. For this repair, 34 samples were submitted to the City of Calgary's accredited water lab. In addition to these 34 samples, there were multiple on-site at the side of the pipe, side of the repair, samples taken to look at chlorine and turbidity. Together, this provided HS, our partners with Environment and Protected Agency areas, and the city, a really thorough understanding of what was happening in near real time as we filled, flushed, and then tested this feeder main. Water quality in this feeder main, when we're looking at our early steps, so these early indicators, turbidity, so how clear is the water, residual chlorine, how clean is the water, these are the two first things we look at. And these standards early in the flushing stage met and exceeded regulatory requirements, stabilized, and remained at that point throughout the flush. We then took 34 samples, as I said. They were tested in the City of Calgary's accredited drinking water lab. All of these samples throughout represent multiple time points across the fill, flush, and test stages, and multiple geographic locations across the feeder main. All 34 samples, we were unable to detect any microorganisms, so no bacteria were identified in any of these 34 samples. This is tremendous and terrific news. It really speaks to the excellent work of the City of Calgary and partner crews in this repair work. In addition to this, microbacterial testing, which is our standard protocol, the City of Calgary conducted additional physical parameters or chemistry tests. You can think of that as when you grab bottled water, all these numbers on the side, how many parts per million. They conducted thorough chemistry testing on this water, including cations, anions, metals, and through early in the flush and continuing throughout the flush, all of these have met or exceeded Health Canada drinking guidelines. So putting this all together, reviewing the data, reviewing data to show us that we achieved adequate disinfection in the pipe, Earlier today, Alberta Health Services, in collaboration with Environment and Protected Areas, provided the City of Calgary with no objections and the ability for the city to proceed into the stabilization phase. I want to stress that as we move forward through the stabilization phase, additional water quality testing will continue to occur to inform decisions and to ensure that water remains safe for Calgarians and community partners to consume. I want to end by giving many thanks to the terrific laboratory technicians and experts who have supported this work. I wouldn't be able to be up here providing this information to you folks without the dedicated team who have worked on this. And with this, I'll pass it back to the Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Rizzuti. We appreciate the partnership that we have with you and the quick turnaround that you were able to provide. Now, as you have all heard, we are nearing the point at which we can talk about reducing indoor water savings efforts, but we aren't there yet. Outdoor water restrictions also remain in place, as does the fire ban. We are at the final and riskiest stage of water restoration right now. Now is the time to keep up your tremendous water saving efforts. Anyone with pipeline experience will tell you that this stage is risky and we are not out of the woods yet. Risks still remain. So let's continue to be good water stewards while we watch carefully for how things proceed. We have promised to provide you with updates twice daily, and we are committed to doing so tomorrow as well on Canada Day. So please stay tuned for our updates at 8:30 in the morning through the live stream, and then again tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock right here at the Emergency Operations Center. And I will now invite Chris to field any questions from media.
What would be a reasonable timeline, assuming that everything goes as well as the AHS testing did? What would be a reasonable timeline to start easing restrictions? A day or two?
So I'm going to ask Director Bouchart to give us a better impression of timelines. We have said that July 1st was our best case scenario. We told people early on that it might be July 5th. Director Bouchart.
And thank you for the question. As we had indicated very early in the process, we had timelines for each of the steps. The stabilization step has a timeline of 3 to 5 days. We believe that we're on track in terms of the steps that we've gone through so far, and that with the stabilization, assuming everything goes perfectly as we hope, then the 3 to 5 days is still appropriate. And during that time, we would start seeing gradual easing of restrictions.
That's 3 to 5 days from today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thursday, you've got the floor.
With the Old Beautiful fire, just wondering if there's updated numbers on how much was used. I know it was 1.2 million this morning, but they've obviously been there all day with finding hotspots, and just how much of an impact maybe that has.
First, I'd like to say our thoughts are with the business owners and the neighbors in that area. It's another sober reminder of why we need to continue to conserve water. The latest update that we have from the Calgary Fire Department is still the 1.2 million liters that would have been used to help suppress that fire.
What kind of impact does that have on how much water we have? That seems like a lot of water when we're talking about using like 450 million a day as a city. To hear that there's more than 1.2 million used for a fire, it seems like that must have put us in a worse spot.
So those numbers the fire occurred early this morning. So those numbers will be part of the usage that we see tomorrow for Calgarians. And it is the reason that we need to conserve water. We need to make sure that we have enough water for firefighting efforts. It needs to make sure we have enough water for Alberta Health Services and our hospitals. So we definitely see an impact on the system, but it's the result of the work of Calgarians that allows us to have enough water to deal with these situations.
If I can go back to Bushart, if that's okay. With talking about the risk that comes with the stabilization phase, if you could just speak a little bit more about preparations maybe in place just in case something does go wrong over these next few days?
Absolutely. So we do have crews on standby in case we do have another failure of the pipe. But our focus right now in terms of mitigating the risk is making sure that we set the system and we respond to how the system adjusts to the introduction of the pumps. So as we turn on the pumps, we're looking at how the system behaves and making further adjustments to our system to respond to the system.
We'll just add to
And I might just add to that throughout this process, you've heard us talking about contingency plans that we're putting in place. And so we have a number of contingency plans, including equipment that's on site right now, able to respond rapidly if there should be issues. We've created and ordered additional spare parts that we have. So we have 3 segments of pipe that are ready to be installed if we have any issues arise. And we've also ordered some exterior repair kits for the pipe that have arrived in Calgary. And so we have those on stock now. We didn't have those when this first started. And so throughout this process, we've been preparing in case other issues should come up. And so we're ready to respond rapidly if required.
What kind of equipment? And is it a worry, is the risk more in those areas that have been repaired, or is it a system-wide risk?
So if you're driving along 16th Avenue, you'll see just past the home road exit, we have a large backhoe, a number of pieces of large equipment so that if required, we can respond rapidly and really get down to the feeder main quickly to repair it. We've also brought in additional pumps if we need to dewater it. And our concern isn't with respect to the repairs on the hot spots in the original break that we've completed. Our concern is the entire pipe. We understand more about this pipe now, and we understand that we need to do a medium and long-term rehabilitation of this pipe. And so as we slowly bring it up back to pressure and flow, we're going to watch it and monitor it to make sure that no other issues arise. But if they do arise, we'll be ready to respond quickly.
Thank you. Thank you.